And very interesting. Here's the story. So this law, they worked with all business owners. The men were at the table. They agreed absolutely unequivocally this was the right direction. It needed to happen. We were going to do this. But the men at the table said, could we have a little time? So they said, all right. So they gave them 4 years. 4 years to ramp up. 4 years to ramp up. Not one corporate board had the requisite percentage of male and females until the law went into effect. They weren't willing to do it until they were mandated to do it. And when they mandated it, then suddenly there were plenty of women to fill these corporate board seats that weeks ago or months ago or years ago didn't exist. So, just another example of how public policy really does move the agenda and move the agenda forward, and without it, we're all left to decide whether or not we feel like it. Whether I want to believe the research that I've read or I've heard or I've seen. So here in Rhode Island, we're working on a few things. We're working on representation in the corporate sector, which Susan shared with you the Vision 2020 report. We're working on an initiative called RIGAC, which is the Rhode Island Gubernatorial Appointments Project. And we have more than doubled the number of women that are serving on boards and commissions and in high-level cabinet positions. And I'm going to repeat the quote I said earlier, which is courtesy of former governor of Vermont, Madeline Kunin, who says, if you're not at the table, you're on the table. And this is where it's so critical that we have women in office and leading public policy efforts, because we have, go back to the brains, we have different priorities. All right, and when we're at the table, regardless of our political affiliation, those priorities bubble up to the top. So things like healthcare, things like education, things like transportation, things like food and nutrition bubble up to the top. So it's important that we have more women in office. It's important that we have more women doing public policy. It's important that we have more women at leadership tables. And all of that is important to the economic bottom line. We're also working, and many of you, maybe you know, I hope you know. So Rhode Island is the 3rd state in the nation to have passed paid family leave. So, yay is right. It's a big deal. My pleasure. So Rhode Island passed paid family leave in this legislative session. It rolls out January 1. It gives families 4 weeks of paid family leave for birth of a new child, adoption. It gives it for sick parent, in-law, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it has the broadest definition of family in the country, and it is the only policy in the country of the 3 that has job protections. So we're very fortunate to be able to move in the right direction and to give families, so many of us who are struggling in the sandwich generation, dealing with elder care and child care at the same time, it gives us the opportunity to care for our families. And it changes the paradigm, because now men and women can take leave for having a new child, for having an elder care. So part of what we were trying to do with this piece of legislation was shift culture around who are caregivers in the state of Rhode Island. So we worked on several other things, but I'm going to move forward. So part of what's been going on across the country is, I hope that you've been hearing about public policy that's moving forward. Federally, the Family Act is going to be introduced next week, and that is paid family leave at the federal level. And this is being championed by Representative DeLauro and Pelosi. And actually tomorrow, if you're around at 1 o'clock and can go to the Chamber of Commerce in Providence, she is going to be there along with David Cicilline and Senator Gail Golden. They're going to be talking about paid family leave in Rhode Island as a national model, and has significantly influenced the Family Act, and they're going to be talking about the Family Act as well as the Women's Economic Security Act, which is also going to be introduced in a couple of weeks. So New York, the state of New York, also initiated this year a women's economic agenda, a women's economic security agenda. It failed in the end. Much of the bill passed. It was reproductive health that held up the entire thing. Yes, that's okay. Well, it's not okay, but that's okay to be heavy side. Frustrating nonetheless. But here in Rhode Island, Women's Fund has been working quietly for the last 2 years since I came back from Scandinavia to do a very similar thing. And so we will be introducing a gender equality omnibus bill. We have 3 policy platform issues, main issues. There are many bills in this. We're still working out the fine details. But representation, including corporate boards, which California just passed. Workforce and workplace policies are in that, to include equal pay, paid family leave, pregnancy discrimination, so that reasonable accommodations are made for pregnant women in the workplace. In addition to long-term care issues. So it's a very broad-based policy, but we've been working hard, and we are planning to roll this out to make Rhode Island the first gender equality state in the nation. So we're excited. We're scared. So, what you should know is that we do have pay equity law in Rhode Island. There's enough holes in it to put all that change in. So we'll be working to take care of that. And why? Why does pay equity matter? Well, I just told you about the burgeoning group of women living in poverty, and that's a result of unequal pay and benefits that are assigned to wages. So when you're not making equal wages, you're also not being compensated in benefits, and that impacts your ability to retire. So the truth is, I'm over my time, so let's get ahead. The truth is that what you're saying on the way home on the cell phone is being said by the majority of us. And that the truth is, it isn't just you. It's me, it's the clients you serve, it's people across socioeconomic demographics. And again, there are things that each of us can do to manage our stress, to bring workplace change so that our workplaces join the 21st century. But I implore you to think about public policy and support of public policy and advancement of public policy so that we can have long-term systems change that address institutional barriers, that address systemic barriers, so that we can have cultural shifts that change and reshape the way that Rhode Islanders work and the way that Rhode Islanders play. Otherwise, we continue to pull babies out of the river. And maybe you know the story and maybe you don't, but it's one we've been telling for 12 years at the Women's Fund. So I'm walking along a river. What's your name? Debbie. I'm walking along the river and I see Debbie, and she is in the river, and there are these babies falling down the river. They're floating down the river. And so what's Debbie doing? She's trying to save them all. She's pulling them out of the river. And so I see Debbie, and I notice what she's doing, and she looks at me. We make eye contact, and I keep walking. And what does she think? Right? What the heck is she doing? She doesn't care. Why is she letting me do this, right? So then Susan comes along, and she sees her coming and pulling babies out of the river, and she jumps in, and she's helping pull babies out of the river, and pretty soon the whole room, you're all there. You're all there, but you're telling everybody, this woman, she walked by, she didn't come in, she didn't help. But what I was doing was walking to the top of the river to figure out who was throwing the babies in and get them to stop. Because the truth is, when you keep letting the need doesn't go away, it just expands and it grows and it grows and it grows till it's completely unmanageable. I'm not saying we have to do away with those services. Those services are critically important. But if we don't address the cultural, institutional barriers, the systemic barriers, then the river's just going to be overflowing, and people at the top are just going to keep throwing us in. What we pay attention to grows. We pay attention to only the babies floating down the river, then that's all that's ever going to grow. If we start paying attention to what's going on at the top of the river, that can grow. And I believe that this state is poised to take a leadership role in changing workplace and workforce practices so that we can all have a better quality of life, so that we can all have healthcare outcomes that we're looking for to achieve for ourselves and for our families. And this is actually a slide taken in Iceland. I don't know if any of you have ever been, but I walked off the plane and I was like, I landed on the freaking moon. I was like, where am I? Because it's all this like lava rocks. And I saw all these beautiful pictures and I was like, where's the beauty? Where's the waterfall? Where's the... And it's all there. But for the first 2 hours, looked very hard to find something living, and this was growing up out of a lava rock. So, you pay for, I was paying attention and found something living. So thanks for your attention. Thanks for